This is awkward. So I submitted a challenge to my own audience about a week ago or so, and it was about a commander that I had been requested to make for a long time called Magus Lucia Kane. And I thought that upon making that video, all of my time that I would need to spend around Magus Lucia Kane would be over. I did my job, I made the video, and I was able to move on with my life. Except I asked a question that I should not have asked. I asked, what kind of damage can this commander do? And now, I did this primarily as a joke. I thought that surely nobody would try to do the math on this, and surely if they did the math on it, they would just figure out a way to go infinite and just leave it at that. And a few people actually did figure out ways that that commander could go infinite very easily with the exact build that I made. Unfortunately for me, there is one person in this conversation who managed to actually, do all of the work on this and wrote up an entire thesis on how to get maximum damage and what that number ends up looking like. This user's name is Alvar, and I said in that video that I would make whatever kind of video that you wanted. So, here I am making a video about a very particular commander I didn't expect to be making a video on ever, because I've had this thing sitting in my binder for ages and I've not actually built it. This is Thantis the War Weaver, and we agreed on a budget of $50 for the Thantis deck. Now, before we get into this absolutely crazy commander, let's get into some absolutely crazy math for Magus Lucia Kane. For those who haven't seen the video, the gist of it is Magus Lucia Kane is an X-cost deck that aims to win with using cards like Fireball and making them do lots of damage. So, assumptions. Each opponent has a deck of 99 cards with a 5-color commander. Mulligans down to 0 and will take no game actions aside from those required, such as drawing for their turn and moving between phases and playing command tower on their first turn. This means each opponent will lose on their 100th draw step as they attempt to draw from an empty deck. Okay, cool. So we are working with the maximum amount of turns available, not counting an Elixir of Immortality, setting everything on fire. I will take the first turn, giving me exactly 100 turns to play Solitaire. It is very likely that I will deck out before this occurs, but in that case of a turn after action loop, this is the limiting factor. All draws will be controlled such that this is the optimal instance of playing this deck. Relative permanents, the Archaeomancer, Ardent Elementalist, Chronarch, and Salvager of Secrets. We untap our commander with cards like Kelpie Guide, Kiora's Follower. Again, if you've seen the Magus Lucia Kane deck, you saw how I was trying to make that deck function. Using extra mana with certain spells, copying certain spells, defining most damage. Most damage can be defined in 3 ways. A, highest summed total of damage across all targets, or B, highest summed total of damage across all players including ourselves, or all opponents, or highest damage against a single target. Yeah, I can tell this person has written college papers, because this is the type of thoroughness that you need with that. So we continue on saying that there are different X-cost spells that will accomplish each of these goals, all of which will be covered in this section, later being referred to as our big boy stinky damage card. In case A, Exocrine is the obvious choice, as our plan is going to revolve around copying our creatures a bunch. So even under the assumption that the opponents have taken no game actions and have no permanents, we will have a large number of creatures that are dealt damage as well as ourselves. In case B, Hurricane, which deals X damage to everybody, deals X damage to all players with only one other mana in its cost. This will be the lowest CMC effect in this deck that deals X damage to all players. If we are looking to win with this strategy, then Jaya's Immolating Inferno is the card to choose. However, I am of the belief that we are not trying to win, as there are only 2 scenarios in which the events of this document play out. A, we have lost the friendship game and are playing alone like a sad little man, or B, we have friends willing to put up with this, meaning we've won in every way that matters. Interestingly, for case C, this actually comes down to combat damage. Utilizing Repulsive Mutation as our big boy stinky damage card, we can pump up a creature in the final turn to swing for our big boy damage. Because 1/1 counters will stay, this can also be progressed over several turns rather than in one stack. As there is an infinite combo in this deck that someone discovered before me, we will be going for KC, since the wording of the request from Suris is the highest number of possible damage that Magus Lucia Kane can do, and I like to be pedantic, since in all other cases, Magus Lucia Kane is not actually the one doing damage. And there's a whole area for like, these are the cards that need to be done, and here's the math, and they go into all of the math. Our commander can tap 2+ times during the untap step, and then during using our permanents that allow our commander to untap, cast aggressive biomancy for X equals 39, targeting a particular card. This gets copied 6 more times by Magus Lucia Kane, 3 more times by Galvanic Iterations, 2 more times by Tomb of Horror Adventurer, and 1 time by Swarm Intelligence, for a total of 13 instances, with all kinds of math that I simply do not understand for how to go about this. And so there's this number here, right? Which seems like this should be the number that matters, right? Magus Lucia Kane's upward damage should be 68,610,875. But the math continues. And then we finally get down. Here's the part that I found most interesting. This is the damage that we are left with. We swing on one lucky opponent for damage equals this formula. And then that number looks like this. I should not have given such a specific request for Magus Lucia Kane. In doing so, I ended up having to stare at these numbers for days, trying to figure out how am I going to make a Thantis deck when I myself have not been able to do one of those, even though I wanted to when I got a Lord Windgrace deck a long time ago. But 2, I can't even fathom a world in which you do this to somebody, and this is outside of the deck's ability to go infinite. This is one mathematician's attempt at trying to figure out what that number will ultimately look like. It just keeps going, by the way. It just keeps going. It's like we're reading pi. It's just like we're reading pi. That's all this is. This is insane to me. Alvar, I do not understand exactly how much cocaine you had to do before having one giant night of mathmatology, but I'm watching the end result of your work, and I'm watching it scroll by, and I'm watching it go faster and faster and faster, and it's just not fucking ending. And I do not understand. Oh my God. I don't know the gender of this person. I apologize, Alvar. So they also included Python code for how to replicate the results for any of you who want that. A link to this entire document is in the Discord if you have not joined the Discord already. Apparently, this is the craziness that goes up in that particular Discord. I was unaware. I got pinged one day and I saw this, and I think my brain leaked out my ears. Anyway, that is the longest preamble I've ever done for one of these videos ever. So, with all that said, let's talk about the Spider Lady. Thantis the War Weaver is a 6-mana hefty commander with vigilance and reach, and it makes all creatures attack each combat if able, though this is not Goad. And if a creature attacks us or a planeswalker we control, put a 1/1 counter on Thantis the War Weaver. Originally, I wanted to make this as a Super Friends deck, right? I figured that proliferate effects would benefit Thantis as much as they would benefit any of the planeswalkers, and Thantis triggers off of the planeswalkers as well, and Thantis would give people active punishment for trying to attack our planeswalkers. That's what I thought I was going to do. Instead, I realized that there's a lot of sub-mechanics when it comes to combat that we can actually abuse, and we can use these sub-mechanics to patch up one of the weaknesses that Goad-style decks typically run into. You see, when you're playing a Goad commander, you always run into the issues of somebody not having a creature-heavy deck, or, the worst one, 2 players get eliminated by the Goad mechanic, and then you are the only one left, and you are now strapped for win cons. Luckily for us, Thantis has Vigilance and Reach, and these 2 abilities combined allow us to have a blocker up at all times, and Thantis has the ability to block flyers, so if somebody has a dragon deck, we can stop that too. Thantis also has a Voltron style win con that we will be able to utilize throughout our game. But without further ado, let's get into what we are going to be doing. We are going to be trying to force multiple players to attack, and we are going to try to benefit from those attacks. And we are going to try to establish board states on everyone's boards so that they always have stuff that they are having to attack with. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the cards that are going to benefit most from our commander's ability and supplement our deck's strategy, beginning with Vraska the Silencer. She's got Death Touch, which means that blocking her is already a bad proposal, and anytime a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, we can pay 1 mana, and if we do, we return that card to the battlefield tapped under our control as a treasure token. This gives us supreme access to utility. Oftentimes, Goad decks suffer from not being able to get access to win cons. Sometimes, Vraska will just give us win cons that our opponents have. Not that we don't have win cons of our own, but Vraska gives us early access to other ones other people are setting up. Then we have Carter Doom Scourge. Whenever he enters the battlefield, we make all creatures attack each combat if able, and if an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and we gain 1 life. If a creature is attacking us, we probably always have the ability to stop it with our commander, and on top of that, adding that little bit of extra burn damage all the time will make it easier to win via Voltron damage later, or just ping people to death throughout the game. Ravenloft Adventurer also works really well here because she gives us the initiative, which means we will not only be making people attack, but we are going to be putting targets on random players' backs. When you have the initiative, you gain the Undercity, which is a wonderful token that has multiple abilities that we are going to be using very, very well. First of all, it lets us go get a basic land from our deck and put it into our hand, which is very useful given that we have a mana-hungry commander. Then it allows us to scry 2 or put 2/1/1 counters on a creature, likely our commander. Then we hit the arena, which allows us to goad a target creature. If we want a creature to be forced to attack, but not necessarily attack us, we can do that too. Or we can make a player lose 5 life, or make a treasure token to ramp further. You pick what you want. Then you can make a 4/1 black skeleton token with menace, really good to be forced to attack with constantly, or go to the archives for a little bit of draw power. And then finally, at the Throne of the Dead 3, if you go and have the initiative happen 5 times, you will reveal the top 10 cards of your library, put any creature from among them onto the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters, and give it hexproof until your next turn. This is a wonderful mechanic, and remember that the initiative is gained every single time somebody deals combat damage to the player who originally had the initiative. So, when you are passing initiative around like a hot potato, you are incentivizing people to engage in table politics, engage in fighting, and I think you're going to have a whole lot of fun making players do this. And sometimes players don't have creatures to attack with, so we're going to give people creatures with Griswold and Goblin Spymaster. The Spymaster says that each opponent gets a 1/1 red goblin that makes them attack with all of their creatures every combat, so even if our commander is gone, we are still forcing people to fight. And Griswold will give people 1/1 green plants, and anytime a creature token dies, we can put a 1/1 counter on Griswold. Sometimes when we're fighting aristocrat decks, this just gives us a way to kill them. Other times, Griswold will gain maximum benefit from all of the combat that everybody's being forced to engage in. And then next and finally in this particular section, we have Ember Wild Captain. When this touches the battlefield, we become the monarch, which again, like the initiative, will be passed around the table like a hot potato. Whenever an opponent attacks you while you have the monarch, Ember Wild Captain will deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand. There are many scenarios where this will just win the game outright if you only have you and an opponent left. This allows us to circumvent the problem of Goad that it typically runs into. But we need to have more backups than that. Let's say that we've eliminated enough players that the only person to attack is us. And of course, our commander's forcing them to attack. So how do we survive that? Well, we are going to go ahead and give maximum benefits for attacking us. Well, benefits to us and punishments to them, beginning with Marchesa's Decree. This also can give us the monarch, giving another bit of hot potato to pass around. And whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, then they lose 1 life. Hissing Miasma does the same thing. When somebody attacks you, they lose a life. Revenge of Ravens does the same thing. When somebody attacks you, they lose a life and you gain a life. Blood Reckoning does the same thing. And then Kazul, Tyrant of Cliffs, says anytime a creature an opponent controls attacks you, you make a 3/3 ogre token unless they pay 3 mana. So you are either heavily taxing them out of the game, or you are giving yourself blockers to survive all of that garbage. But It's not just ourselves we need to protect in our games. We also need to protect our commander, so we've got a package that is able to protect our commander as well, beginning with, of course, Swiftfoot Boots. Giving a creature hexproof and haste can be useful for a variety of reasons. You've used it in a billion decks already. You don't need me to explain to you why Swiftfoot Boots is a good card. Then we have Revitalizing Repass, which puts a 1/1 counter on a creature and gives it indestructible until end of turn. And of course, it is an MDFC, so we can use it to mana fix if we need that. Seraph the Viper's Fang will give all of our creatures that are tapped to Death Touch and all of our untapped creatures hexproof, with the ability to untap a creature or a land we control. This is great for a variety of reasons, not the least of which being protecting our commander with hexproof, but also this allows us to keep up blockers on other players' turns by untapping our creatures and constantly having our board manipulated by this, so that we always have either creatures that are able to block or creatures that are able to negate effects that are trying to target them. Shelob, Child of Ungoliant, will give our commander Ward 2, and of course give it Death Touch as well. And anytime a spider creature is dealt damage, or anytime a creature is dealt damage by a spider and dies, we make a token copy of that creature. So our commander will just yank that card. If we have Vraska and Shelob on the board, we get to double up on this ability as well. Then we have Errasta of the Endless Web. This will give us 1/2 green spider tokens with reach anytime somebody casts an instant or sorcery spell, which is mainly here just to make sure that we do not die randomly to people getting enough creatures on the board. We also know that we're going to be losing stuff constantly, so we are going to add a Timeless Witness and an Eternal Witness into our recursion package, and we also need to be able to just flat out win the game. We need ways to annihilate people as well. So I've got a 4-card win con section here, starting with Rancor. Rancor gives a creature 2/0 and trample, and if it's put into a graveyard, it'll go back into our hand. Our commander can get very big, but it needs trample to be able to seal the deal, so we are going to be constantly giving it trample. Glaive of the Guild Pact, I know I'm kind of giving away the sauce on what we're going to be using as well in this deck, but Glaive of the Guild Pact will give a creature 1/0 for every gate you control and give it Vigilance and Menace. This gives us a couple benefits. If we give it to our commander, Menace is wonderful for it to have, and making it bigger means we get more Voltron damage. However, there's another benefit to Glaive of the Guild Pact. If we put it on one of our other creatures that we want to be able to keep up as a blocker, we can then pass Vigilance onto other creatures. This can also be done by using Team Pennant. This will give a creature 1/1 Vigilance and Trample, and Haunted Cloak gives creatures Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. All of these are being used to either give our commander Trample or Evasion or extra power, or give Vigilance to our board so that we constantly have untapped creatures that are able to block as we need them to. That should make sure that no matter how things pan out in the game, we are always able to seal the deal on our opponents, either by having blockers up or by making sure that our creatures are making it through to their life totals. However, sometimes we want to seal the deal very, very guaranteed. And for that, we have this tiny section called Hot Potatoes, beginning with Alexios, Demos of Cosmos. Alexios has trample and attacks every combat if able, cannot be sacrificed, and cannot attack the owner of the card. At the beginning of every player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios and then untaps it and puts a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. Alexios is a way to guarantee that people have creatures on the board on top of the tokens we are giving them, and this creature is particularly large. Either somebody's going to lose a creature trying to block Alexios, or they're going to have to high-five the damn thing and we lose Alexios, but that's perfectly fine. We're just wanting to pass this around to multiple people. And then we have Assault Suit, which will turn our commander into an Alexios, giving it 2/2 in haste and the ability to never be forced to attack you. At the beginning of every opponent's upkeep, we give them control of our commander and force them to attack with it, which of course means that we will be passing Voltron damage around the table at a rapid pace, and there is very little anybody will be able to do to stop it. Whew. Now, let's ignore the existential dread that all of the math from the previous deck gave me, and let's talk about how we're going to draw into our cards. For our draw section, we've got 10 cards to talk about, beginning with a simple one. Harmonize just draws 3 cards out of the deck. Read the Bones allows us to scry 2 and draw 2, giving us the ability to potentially dig for 4 cards. But past that, we've also got Death Reap Ritual and Morbid Opportunist that are basically the same card. Anytime one or more other creatures die, we get to draw a card once a turn. With all of the combat that's going to be happening all the time, deaths are a likely occurrence. We're also making our commander very big, so on top of this, we are going to be using Soul's Majesty that allows us to draw cards equal to the greatest power of a creature we control. Well, it's really a target creature, so be warned, you want to use this when your commander has hexproof or you're sure people are tapped out, because if they remove the commander, then Soul's Majesty will just not draw us any cards at all. We also have Garruk Primal Hunter, who can draw us cards equal to the greatest power we control. Return of the Wild Speaker can do the same thing, and Rishkar's Expertise can do it as well, with also allowing us a free card cast from any of the cards that we have in our hand after we do our big draw with Rishkar's. Then we have the new Season of Gathering, which allows us to choose up to 5 paws worth of modes, putting a 1/1 counter on a creature and giving it Vigilance and Trample until end of turn, which is super good for our commander. Or getting rid of an artifact or enchantment, destroying all permanents that are that particular type, or drawing cards equal to the greatest power of creatures we control. You can either give our commander 2 1/1 counters and trample and draw cards, or you can get rid of all artifacts and enchantments and then give our commander vigilance and trample. Honestly, choose what works for you with this. And finally, we have Harvester of Souls, who says anytime a non-token creature dies, we may draw a card. He's just another copy of Morbid Opportunist and Death Reap Ritual without the upper cap that those cards tend to have. That all said, drawing all of our cards is fine and dandy, but we do need to make sure that our opponents do not have the ability to win the game, so let's talk about disrupting them. For our removal package, we are running 13 cards and a couple of board wipes, beginning with Return to Nature. This gets rid of an artifact or an enchantment, or allows us to exile a card from a graveyard at instant speed. Then we have Decimate that blows up an artifact, and creature, enchantment, and land. That land part is actually doubly important for our deck, because our deck is uniquely weak to Glacial Chasm and Maze of Ith. This will allow us to circumvent those as potential problems. Putrefy can blow up an artifact or a creature. Binding the Old Gods can blow up anything, and then it ramps us, and it can also give our commander Death Touch later. Rakdos Charm can exile all cards from a graveyard or blow up an artifact or deal 1 damage to a person for every single creature that they have. Stump Stomp allows us to make our commander deal damage equal to its power to any creature or planeswalker. It's also a land on the backside. Death Sprout can blow up a creature while also ramping us a land. Royal Assassin can blow up any tapped creature even while it's in combat. This can save us from certain nasty situations. Bridgeworks Battle is another fight spell that just happens to be attached to a land on the other side. Hagra Mauling is a removal spell attached to a land on the other side, and Fell the Profane is Power Crept Hagra Mauling attached to a bolt land on the other side. And then we have Beast Within, allowing us to blow up any target permanent, and Vandal Blast, which can let us get rid of all of our opponent's artifacts if we so choose. Then in terms of board wipes, we are running a couple of important ones here. First of all, Blasphemous Act. I've picked this one because it's usually easy to cast low on mana, but in our deck uniquely, our commander gains a lot of 1/1 counters, so it is also very likely that they will just survive a Blasphemous Act if people have aimed enough pitchforks at us. This also allows us to clear the way of blockers for our commander to potentially Voltron somebody out of the game. Then we have Gaze of Granite, which also can be used to board wipe everything and not kill our commander, because we blow up every non-land permanent with mana value X or less with this. If you pay 8 mana into this, it'll get rid of everything that costs 5 or less, including people's mana rocks, and then our commander will survive it because our commander is a big, beefy 6-cost girly, and that is why I want to run stuff that is very likely to not hit our commander. I want our commander to survive in all situations, no matter what we do. That all said, let's go and talk about how we're going to afford an 8-cost board wipe. For this section, I am combining all of the ramp and the gate fetch because upon further reflection, gate fetch kind of works as ramp. Most of this comes from many games I've been playing with my Niv Mizzet deck, where just dropping another land at normal speed means Baldur's Gate gets more ramp. So It's a pedantic thing. Go ahead and choose how you wish to view this, but let's begin with Open the Gates, which can grab any gate out of your deck, put it in your hand. District Guide and Gatekeeper Vine, which will do the exact same thing. Navigation Orb can grab a 2 basic lands or 2 gates out of the deck and put 1 on the battlefield and 1 into your hand. Explore the Underdark will grab 2 gates and put 1 on, or both of them on the battlefield, while also giving you the initiative, giving us another way to hot potato a combat trick around. Circuitous Route also gets 2 gates out of the deck and puts them on the battlefield. Then we have a Soul Ring, because this is not a $15 deck, so we can actually afford putting a Soul Ring in here. We're also running a Sakura Tribe Elder and a Rampant Growth to grab basic lands out of the deck, and we are using a Farseek as well as a Wood Elves to grab non-basic lands out of the deck, and a Wayfarer's Bauble and a Search for Tomorrow as other ways of getting basics out of our deck at differing speeds than the normal, like 2-mana Rampant Growth speeds. Then we have an Arcane Signet for basic ramp, and a Trove of Temptation, which says that a player must swing a creature at you all the time if they have the option to. They only have to pick one, but they must do it. And at the beginning of our end step, we get to put a colorless treasure on the battlefield. Trove of Temptation is fantastic here because it guarantees our commander will constantly experience growth and potentially be able to just eat creatures on the board all the time. And finally, we have Saravok's Tome, another way to get the initiative while also giving us a 2-mana mana rock. It also allows you to freely cast cards off the top of your library later by exiling cards from the top until you hit a non-land card, but we will only ever see that benefit if we have completed a dungeon, which we do have the ability to do since we are a slow and grindy deck, and it's likely that we will see 5 upkeeps of initiative triggers. As far as the land base is concerned, we are running 3 forest, 2 mountains, and 2 swamps, along with some dual land shenanigans. We've got the filter lands of Mossfire Valley and Shadowblood Ridge and Viridescent Bog because they are all nice and budget now, and then we have fetchable lands in the form of Smoldering Marsh, Cinder Glade, and Haunted Mire. Tango lands where we can afford it, and other lands where we can't. With a Golgari Rot Farm topping things off a single bounce land because we are running a lot of MDFCs, so oftentimes if you're running a lot of modal dual-face lands, you do want the ability to put the card back in your hand later. We're also running a single Twisted Landscape to have some land fetch available to us with the Omni lands of Command Tower and Exotic Orchard. Then, of course, we are running a 12-card gates package. All the gates we can possibly run at our budget in Jund. There are 2 more gates that would have combined cost the total of this deck's price to begin with, so we're not using those. We're using 12 instead of 14 gates. Baldur's Gate is, of course, the big gate that we care about because it allows us to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of gates we control. And, of course, we have Gond Gate, which allows our gates to come into play untapped. Past that, we have the Guild Gates, which, you know, they are stand-ins for all the other dual lands. Cliff Gate, Manor Gate, and Heap Gate, which are the thriving lands, but, you know, not shitty. Sorry, not Heap Gate. Black Dragon Gate's the one that does that. Heap Gate's different. Heap Gate makes treasure tokens. This is a gate that actually can ramp us throughout the game. Basilisk Gate gives us an alternate win column with giving our commander XX, where X is the number of gates we control, with Gateway Plaza and Thran Portal being the more unwieldy gates in the package, but they are still perfectly useful in getting our gate numbers up. And then finally, we have our utility lands of Rogue's Passage and Kessig Wolf Run to guarantee our commander gets in there and wins us the game. Mosswort Bridge, because we can cast some of our bigger draw spells off of it, and just some of our bigger spells in general off of it. And it's we get the ability to play those cards as long as Mosswort Bridge sees a creature with power 10 or greater on our board, or combined total of power 10 or greater, which is easy to do with our commander that builds itself up as fast as ours does. And finally, a Bojuka Bog, allowing us to get rid of any player's graveyard. And of course, we have that Golgari Rot Farm to reuse Bojuka Bog if we so choose. That said, if you had an unlimited budget, what would you be doing? We're only going to talk about a couple of cards, because let's be honest, we're already building a $50 deck instead of a $15 deck. This is already not what I would consider a normal budget list for me. So let's get into things. Like I said, this section's going to be far smaller than normal because we are already working with quite the inflated budget compared to normal, but if you were trying to upgrade this deck, one of the first things I would go for would be Toski, Bearer of Secrets. One of the things I needed to skimp out on budget-wise for this was the draw engine, so swapping out a Harmonize for a Toski will give you a repeatable source of draw that is incredibly useful. Also, Toski with Glaive of the Guild Pact goes hard, and I mean hard, giving this indestructible, always having to attack, I get to draw a card if you let me through Squirrel Menace and like +8/+0 is absolutely crazy. Fog Crawler will give us protection for all of our creatures as they are swinging because it gives 1/1 counters on that creature for each 1 damage that is prevented by the Fog Crawler. Or, sorry, it's not really Fog Crawler, it's Vigor, but Universes Beyond is Universes Beyond. No Mercy will give added disincentive for players to swing at you during the turns where it is important for you not to be swung on. Karazakar allows us to have more combat tricks when players are attacked because we get to draw a card and make people lose life anytime an opponent attacks another one of our opponents. It also gives us the ability to goad creatures, and Arachnogenesis gives us a super on-theme fog that will give us a ton of spiders if somebody tries to swing at us, and it also prevents all the damage that those spiders would be doing. It's a fantastic way to turn a game around that otherwise might have not quite gone in your favor. That all said, where are we at on this deck? The numbers are still going! Why have they not ended? I don't understand. I didn't like math to begin with! Why am I having this up? I'm sorry that you had to witness that existential meltdown of everything that is involving my brain, and I'm sorry that there's several pieces of it currently leaking on the floor. I hope you don't slip over any of those. That would be terribly inconvenient for both you and me. That said, Thrasta is a wonderful commander, and I'm glad I finally got a chance to build her. I've honestly had her sitting in my binder for a long time, and I've really been wanting a chance to build her. This gave me a wonderful opportunity to work on her, even if the existential dread of lots and lots of numbers are already currently folding the already smooth cells of my brain together into something resembling a paste. That all said, thank you, Alvar, for the suggestion. Thank you for all of the math that has broken my brain. Thank you, every one of you who watches my content. And I understand the VTuber avatar stuff does make things a little niche for viewers. I've considered, since I already had my main channel where I moved over to using my real face all the time, and that seemed to have a positive effect on the numbers there, but this one is more my hobby, so I like having a place for the avatar to still work, honestly. There's also a fun story behind the avatar being used here specifically, since the first time I used an avatar on YouTube was for a Hearthstone channel years and years and years ago, and that ended up being the main avatar of my main channel, which ended up getting Rule 63'd into this avatar eventually, and well, here we are now coming full circle now that this avatar is being used on an exclusively card game channel again. So, you know, I like it. It's a narrative. That said, thank you for watching. Share the video with some friends if you think that they will be interested. And all things considered, thank you all for being here, even if some of you are crazy mathematicians, and it basically looks like sorcery to me. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Briskreek, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.